Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa will be arriving in New York later on tonight to participate in the high-level week of the United Nations General Assembly. That's also marking its 80th anniversary. The president's packed program includes participations in a two-state solution conference on Monday in relation to the Palestinian question, the general debate on Tuesday, and a reception of heads of delegates that is hosted by US President Donald Trump, among others. Let's now cross live to our US correspondent, that is Sherwin Bryce-Pease, who joins us from New York to give us the latest. A very good afternoon to you, Sherwin. So the president arrives around 9 p.m. local time, your time, tonight in New York, and starting tomorrow. What appears to be a pretty packed schedule? Give us the overview of what will essentially be your diary as well.
Well, it's going to be a long day today, with the president arriving around 9 p.m. local time, around 3 a.m. tomorrow morning your time. Of course, leaving South Africa a bit later than normal on his annual trip here to the UN General Assembly, marking its 80th anniversary, but certainly a packed week. There's the multilateral element here at the United Nations, right? He'll be participating in that two-state solution conference. You've seen a number of Western countries already today. I believe it was the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia announcing that they will formally recognize the state of Palestine. Of course, South Africa among the over 140 countries to already recognize the state of Palestine, and really to infuse a momentum into that conversation in terms of a future independent Palestinian state, with, of course, the backdrop being the devastation and the catastrophe, the humanitarian catastrophe that continues to play itself out in Gaza. So that will be a big focus for the president. He's also due to meet with African heads of state at a reception on Monday. And then the big country statement that we will take live here on SABC News, when President Ramaphosa addresses the UN General Assembly on Tuesday. The general debate, among others, will be President Lula of Brazil, the President of the United States, that, of course, makes a return here to the United Nations after losing an election in 2020, and then, of course, coming back very strongly by defeating Kamala Harris in that November election last year. So he's expected here. On Tuesday, the president will also speak at the Council on Foreign Relations, Alicia. The Council on Foreign Relations is a very prominent think tank here in the United States in terms of foreign policy around the world. They'll be hosting a number of heads of state for one-on-one conversations with senior officials in that organization. And they say President Ramaphosa was invited to discuss South Africa's domestic agenda, bilateral trade relations with the United States, the future of BRICS, and the country's role in that region. On Wednesday, there's a biennial summit on sustainable, inclusive, and resilient economy. That sort of theme very much aligns with what the G20 is seeking to achieve in terms of those multilateral discussions that, of course, will climax, if you will, with the Leaders' Summit in November. A high-level meeting on women's and children's and adolescent health on Wednesday, a special event on climate action, and then, of course, bilateral engagement with U.S. companies on Wednesday. We understand that there will also be a trade and investment dialogue hosted by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and that, I think, will very much align and speak to what the Trade, Industry and Competition Minister, Parks Tau, has been doing in terms of his engagements with the trade representative in Washington this week. I can also tell you, Alicia, that I'm due to speak to Parks Tau in a live conversation on a late edition at around 9:30 p.m. tonight. So very much wanting an update in terms of those very, very important trade negotiations between South Africa and the United States. The question of whether the 30% tariff will be negotiated down, what sort of new avenues are there for strengthening the trade relationship between Washington and Pretoria, and what it will mean in the context of the expiration of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, which is due to expire on the 30th of September. What are the implications for free trade based on AGOA moving forward, or the lack of AGOA moving forward? So certainly a conversation to look forward to with Minister Parks Tau later today.
And I see, Sherwin, you've already started, of course, engaging Team South Africa there. Who else is part of the president's delegation? Because I saw you already engaging with our International Relations Minister, Ronald Damula, who was very forthright about trying to still use this opportunity, as you've just alluded to reset U.S.-Pretoria relations.
Well, that is very much the focus here, right? As every year, when the delegation comes to the United General Assembly, there's also a big element of the trip that is focused on the bilateral relationship with the United States. And the pressure is very much on Team South Africa to really, circumvent some of the obstacles that have been placed in its path in terms of that relationship, and really focus on the economic relationship that is so critical to South Africa's very high unemployment rate. And of course, we don't want to see that get worse. Part of the delegation also includes, as you mentioned, Durko, the Minister of International Relations, Women, Youth and Disabilities. She is here, Minister Chikunga, in her capacity in that portfolio, very much to focus on the 30th anniversary of the 4th Women's Conference. You'll remember the Beijing Conference in the 1990s, 1995, right? As the 30th anniversary. And of course, in the context of the pushback that we've seen in recent years in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, the pushback we've seen in terms of Goal 5 of the SDGs, which is about gender equity and empowerment, and the struggles that societies face around the world in the equity we seek between men and women in the world, and the pushback we are seeing on that. The ministry, as I mentioned, DTI is here, forestry, fisheries and environment. There's a big climate conference that's happening this week. The minister in the presidency for planning, monitoring and evaluation. And then, of course, a big health focus here on the sidelines, on the margins of the UNGA, Minister Aaron Motsoaledi. And we also understand that the Deputy Minister of Communications is also part of the president's delegation. So a lot of ministers here, a lot of cabinet level officials to undergird and support Team South Africa, and here in support of the president's very intense program.
It's going to be intense indeed, Sherwin. And then in terms of the broader UN program, what are some of the key highlights? Among them, of course, the return of US President Donald Trump, who will address the General Assembly on Tuesday and also host a heads of delegation reception later on that night.
All bets are off, right? We always expect the element of surprise when Donald Trump speaks anywhere, and no less within the confines of the UN General Assembly. Just imagine the optics here, right? Just before Donald Trump speaks on Tuesday in that general debate, he will be preceded by President Lula of Brazil. And you'll be aware, Alicia, of the drama that has been unfolding in the public sphere between President Trump and President Lula as it pertains to the conviction of a former Brazilian president and close Trump ally Jair Bolsonaro. And so President Lula has also been very forceful in his repudiation of the unilateral tariffs that have been imposed on many countries, including Brazil. And so one imagines that the tariff issue is also going to find its way into conversations here at the United Nations General Assembly. As I mentioned, President Trump will certainly be looking forward to what he says. Given the context, right, the United States pulling back from multilateralism, it has withdrawn from agencies like the World Health Organization, it has withdrawn from the Human Rights Council in Geneva. And so there is this tension between the role of the United States and its role within multilateralism. Just ask the South Africans, right, and the struggles that they've encountered in terms of getting US interaction at the highest levels in terms of the ongoing G20 discussions. As I mentioned, there will be the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. There'll be a small ceremony to mark that on Monday. Then it will be followed by something called the SDG moment, which this guy sitting in front of you will be hosting on Monday. And then a conference on the two-state solution, very, very important. You're going to see a lot of formal recognition of a Palestinian state, and really a lot of countries talking about the pathway, what needs to happen now, right? And I think the first thing a lot of people can agree on is that there needs to be a ceasefire in Gaza. The 30th anniversary of the 4th Women's Conference, the General Debate, Climate Summit, Sustainable Development, World Program on Action for Youth, the Global Dialogue on AI Governance, International Day for the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons, and the list goes on.
All right. Well, you're certainly going to be busy. We look forward to all those engagements, and best of luck for your host duties there, Sherwin. That is SABC News correspondent live to us in New York, Mr. Sherwin Bryce-Pease.